Okay, let's start the last part of our virtual event and we'll wrap up this CDO Tech Event. So Sean, Josh, and I are going to talk about key takeaways. If you're still in a breakout room, that's great. Continue your conversation, but you might want to close down the Zoom link. So I'll just put out some key takeaways that I have from the event, and then Sean, Josh, maybe you guys could chime in, come off mute. So I'm definitely seeing, this is colored by the research that we did prior to the event, that the products in this space are proliferating, which is exciting, a lot of new innovation. And they're also converging in functionality, especially the data management tools are adopting data governance capabilities quite quickly. So as I said earlier, it's important to evaluate these tools to make sure they fit your requirements. Hopefully we helped you narrow down the number of tools that you need to evaluate to some degree with our product frameworks. Now, the changing regulations and policies also has a play here. We mentioned that automation is key with these tools. You can't do data governance without the automation that they afford, but you can't also do them, keep up with changing regulations and policies without these tools as well as the ever-growing volume of data. So the tools are very important. And the tools can start to embed your knowledge of data governance and your processes so that when employees do leave, you're not high and dry. So the tools can help onboard new employees, document and surface the rules and processes for how you do data governance. So Josh, Sean, any key takeaways from your end?
I think the main one for me is how important metadata is becoming beyond how important it already was. So I think we're just seeing a trend where metadata is going to be utilized more broadly, used to support automation. And, we already know metadata is critical for things like data literacy and privacy and security. So I think that trend is just going to evolve. And along with that, there'll be new roles for managing that metadata and more organizations putting time into a metadata strategy.
Right. So next time we'll be talking about metadata swamps, right?
I get involved in a lot of business transformations, a digital transformation or a data transformation, and it's a really easy sell. So it just makes sense to embed data governance and metadata in your change program. It might seem overwhelming to think that you have to inventory all of your legacy systems, and it just seems like too much work and not enough value when we're about to change everything. I think it's really important that people see the value can be organic and grow. So when your big change program is done, you have that catalog of catalogs, you have that data intelligence available to all of your users. And that really helps your digital transformation go from we're done to we've optimized and we've optimized and we've optimized because we now have so much data and it's so easy to find.
The one term I kept hearing, and I remember Matt said this quite a few times, was the data estate. Is that a term that you guys use?
Not necessarily data estate, but ecosystem is, a common term to kind of what is the entire, landscape of systems and data within the organization. And you can extend that to external sources where you're integrating and pulling information in as well. So I believe that's what he was referring to with data estate.
Yeah, I kind of like that term. And we did have some questions about to what extent do data governance tools cover the data estate? There was questions about unstructured data and real-time data and, AI models. And then Ashwin from Zaloni mentioned, project plans even.
Yep.
And any data asset is fair game, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's either data or metadata, right? So it really shows how important it is to nail down your scope at the beginning. So yes, you could govern all of that, but you probably don't have the capabilities to do that. So start small and expand. And that needs to be linked back to your strategy. But when you are rolling out new solutions, new analytical products and things like that, if you can embed those governance concepts in there, then you don't have to go back and retrofit it later. So the priority should be, on the new stuff being built, and then go back and look at the risks of some of your existing stuff to see if you need to retrofit some governance features in there.
Yeah, that kind of gets at that governance by design, which is an interesting phrase. And I know both you guys use that a lot. And I think you think it's the key really to doing this right. So no matter what your scope is, whether it's a project or it's a domain or the enterprise, you really want to focus on embedding governance into core processes of that scope, right? So when you're building something or deploying something.
And similar to quality by design or privacy by design, these are just concepts of not having things done as an afterthought, doing it as early as possible in your design process. And then it's fully integrated into the solution as opposed to being an add-on later. So it just gives.
Can you give an example of that from one of your clients?
Well, a good example is, if you're doing a predictive model to help understand customer retention or employee retention, even better. So starting at the beginning and looking at, we get back to the risk piece. So what are all of the risks associated with this, data quality, the usage of that data? Are we straddling that ethical line between appropriate use of information and breaching somebody's privacy? And who has the authority to make that decision as to whether we've stepped over that line or not, based on what we're doing with that predictive model? How is that model being used to make decisions that affect employees or customers? And then what are the ways that the outcomes from that model could be undermined through data quality or somebody not doing their job properly, things like that, and then putting controls in place to mitigate those risks. And that's where stewardship comes in, auditing processes. So identifying what we need to do to really manage the quality of that product. So it's not managing compliance risk and all of that. It's also managing the overall quality, which drives the outcomes.
We had a question about ROI, and I'm wondering if you guys track or think it's even possible to calculate ROI of data governance projects.
I'll say, because I've lived in the world of metrics with working with finance teams, anything is possible, but I don't think you'd get alignment on all the VPs on your measurement approach. The ROI of data governance, really, I'll say it over and over again, to protect the company, its customers and employees. You could add partners and stakeholders as well, but I really see data governance as a governing function that is essential to running a business that is data focused. And I will compare it to the project management office or the legal and compliance team or finance or the risk team. I've never heard anyone ask me the question, what's the ROI in finance? Like, why do we need these guys? No, you need it to run the business.
Yeah.
That is one of the mind shifts that I think Sean and I try to help with. And there's different ways to do it, really. And I think part of it talks to one of our first slides today on the difference between data governance and data management, and starting with that education and building up that knowledge.
There is an aspect of data governance where you could incorporate some ROI. So if you're looking at it from a more of a proactive or an enablement perspective, so if your governance resources identify an opportunity to standardize certain data because they know down the road that we want to do some, machine learning or other initiatives that are dependent on that data, then you could have ROI calculations assigned to those initiatives. But when it comes to compliance and some of the other things, it comes back to the reputation of your organization and how important is that to you.
Yeah.
You can actually use risk monitoring or risk tolerance approaches to help with the metric. So if we say data governance is here to protect the data, well, what happens if we lose one record or all of our records? What is the value? What is the impact of that of the organization based on the industry we're in and how much data we have? And it really, that protection metric is easy to get to. An operational metric on performance or how much money are we making? Yeah, we're not making money with data governance.
Right. Well, that makes sense. It's possible to calculate the risk, right? So that might be the way to go. Any other key takeaways, guys?
Yeah, I think that, everything's changing fast, but the more clarity you have around what the priorities are for your organization, what strategic initiatives you have coming up over the next 5 years, If you have a data strategy, understanding the nuances of that, and then relating that to the platforms you need to support data governance, so data governance can support that data strategy.
What about on the tools? Do you think our frameworks are going to help people select the right product? We did have one question in there. It's like, well, all those quadrants that you presented, they all apply. So
I'd say it'll be obvious in the coming few years which companies are using tools and finding the efficiencies that come with data governance and proper data management. They're going to simply perform better. They're going to get insights sooner. They're going to get better information to make decisions, and they're going to drive their companies to more success. I think these data governance platforms are a key to that success. If you're just using Excel, or if you're trying to use an Access database to run your metadata, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you the kind of value that you need.
Yeah. And then even if you do have a data catalog tool and a glossary tool, it really doesn't always give you everything you need. You need those workflows. You need that portal. There's a lot of features you need. And you could use other tools to provide that functionality, but then from an experience perspective for consumers of that information, it gets a little awkward. So we need to manage that experience for data owners, data stewards, and consumers of that metadata to make it as possible.
You know, these tools are really powerful. I don't think most organizations know how to get the most value out of them yet. It's going to take a while before they really mine the depths of what they offer. And at the same time, these products are in a race really to add complementary functionality to support the end-to-end governance process. And whatever domain on whatever system and platform, integrating with whatever existing tools that you have. So they've got a big roadmap ahead of them, but I'm really surprised how fast these guys can move. All the products that we had in the event today are just very dynamic, in many cases adding things very quickly to their product line. So it's a brave new world out there for data governance than it was even a year ago. So
yeah, and I guess one watch out is, with the breadth of functionality that these platforms have, you need to make sure you have the resource capability, or you have the ability to assign resources to be the administrators of those platforms and oversee them, or else they're not going to provide the value that you want.
Right. And with that, I think we've come to our end. Our next event is August 18th on data observability. And then we'll be doing 3 of these a year going forward. So thank you, everyone. If you're still there, if you're not, or you're listening to the recording, we hope you much success in all your data governance endeavors.